This is the offending matter. Bare breasts and bottoms snuggled alongside TV Week and Woman's Day. New legislation before Parliament would have these publications banished to the back of the shop, out of the reach of the young and curious.
We're at the mercy of the publishers and the people who take the photographs and the people who write the stories. So, sure, we sell the product, but that's part of the game.
Well, Parliament's Standing Committee on Social Issues wants to change the rules. Dr. Marlene Goldsmith says the magazines are degrading, portraying women as animals or pieces of meat. Last week, this cover whipped up a storm, so loud were the protests that the publisher, Australian Consolidated Press, withdrew the magazine.
If it's that degrading, well, why do females have their photos taken? I mean, nobody's bending their arm to have their photos taken.
The Newsagents Association is fighting back. It's described the bill as hypocritical. Chief Executive Graham Day says newsagents are the scapegoats for politicians who won't take the tough decisions and ban the magazines altogether. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
This is Newcastle, as the area's 350,000 residents know and love the place. But earlier this week, viewers of a national breakfast program were served the same old song and dance about Newcastle being a dirty, even outdated town.
Mark Twain once wrote, "Newcastle is one long street with a hospital at one end and a cemetery at the other." A personal view, the old hometown would have been even better if they hadn't built the industry on top of it. If you come for a visit, a tip from a local: don't call it Newcastle, it's Newcastle.
All the young men of Newcastle drive down Hunter Street in their hot FJ Holdens with chrome-plated grease nipples and double reverse overhead twin-cam door handles.
A group of local business and community leaders reckon it's about time the rest of Australia was singing a new tune about this place. And if the group has its way, the words on everybody's lips will be Newcastle, Australia's best city. The group of 9 organisations has seized on an article in the February issue of Australian Business Monthly that proclaimed Newcastle as the best city in the nation. Now the group is turning those words of praise into promotional action.
Yes, for a long time we've realised we need to promote the city and get out the truth about its successes and strengths. This gives us an umbrella to all work together to promote the city and the region.
The group's strategy involves distributing 20,000 copies of the magazine article and bringing together all promotion under the banner Australia's Best City.
The rest of the community, the rest of the world, everything they see that comes from this region will be telling them that we're the best.
Group member Peter Evans is used to fighting the dirty city tag Newcastle's got. His latest stoush was on the Today Show after the controversial report was aired.
All right, in 30 seconds, what was wrong with it?
Well, my perception is that Robin was sent to Newcastle to do a demolition job on the city, her old hometown. I think she did a pretty thorough job of it.
Mr Evans says he's worked out why the rest of Australia pans rather than praises Newcastle.
The fact is, most of them haven't been here.
Scott Bevan, NBN News. Five centuries ago, Michelangelo was the creator of some of the greatest art ever admired. But in the Hunter today, the only thing Michelangelo was creating was anxiety. With March the 6th being the day for the computer virus to be activated, thousands of PCs in offices, schools and homes were turned on very cautiously. The Commonwealth Bank does a daily virus check on its computers, but this week the Northern New South Wales branches have been running special Michelangelo scans. To the bank, having all its data wiped by the virus would be
chaotic. The bank would have been affected dramatically in that we just could not afford to have the information that's contained in our system drained.
Forsyth's Computer Services says after a hectic week of running checks for Hunter businesses, it's had a surprisingly quiet day and received no reports of infected terminals. But that could change over the next few days.
We have a lot of PCs here in the Hunter Valley, so it would be likely that there have been Michelangelo infections that haven't been caught in time. So over the next few days we would expect a few reports of infections surfacing.
Michelangelo did strike at the University of Newcastle. 6 computers were infected, but Bruce Hodge from the uni says considering there are 2,000 terminals on campus, the minuscule number of PCs to go down with the virus is a relief. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
The conference held at Narrabri RSL Club attracted almost 200 local residents and 20 National Party MPs, including 5 state ministers. The conference began with the MPs and council representatives addressing the group, then splitting into 4 seminars dealing with different aspects of community issues such as roads and transport. The aim of the conference was to give the politicians and the public a chance to meet, ask questions and to formulate solutions to issues affecting rural and regional communities.
The roll-up is 200 plus, and that indicates pretty clearly that the members and the people of the Northwest wanted to sit down and have a yarn.
Deputy Premier Wal Murray slammed the attitude of Prime Minister Keating over the monarchy and Australia's so-called lack of allegiance to Britain.
You get this Republican debate going on, it all goes one way, and there are many alternative processes.
Local issues such as the development of Moree roads and registration of low loaders were also discussed, with some resolutions made. Further details and decisions are expected.
The Raiders got away to a flying start with Daly and Meninga doing the damage. And then the brilliant lock put Canberra in for number 2. But then emerged a new look Knights. Mark Glanville hasn't played a bad game in 2 years, and he was on the boil again, with Michael Hagan proving he's a long way from a spent force. Then heavens to Betsy, the backline sprung into life. If that wasn't enough, Harrigan gathered steam. Behind 14-8 at the break, the Raiders came out firing and were soon mounting a challenge. Hagan was dynamic and John Schuster brilliant for another Knights 4-pointer. Phil Blake chimed in with Meninga to bring Canberra closer. But then the Knights stepped up a gear with Ashley Gordon seeing daylight. And Brad Godden finished off a golden day for the Knights.
Conscious of the fact that the first development approval expires in March, and the people of Lake Macquarie can be conscious and be confident that that work would be commenced and then other work would follow later on.
That was 6 weeks ago. At the time, the head of Gordon Pacific, Noel Gordon, was sure that work on his $800 million vision for a resort at Caves Beach would begin this month. He was confident that a joint venture arrangement with a Hong Kong company would be finalised, securing $24 million to get the first section, including a golf course and roads, underway. But the development application for the Lakeside Golf Course lapsed yesterday and work has not begun. The Lapps DA prompted the coming together today of Mr Gordon and Mayor Doug Carley.
He assured me that he would have finance to continue with that application later on in the year.
Alderman Carley says Gordon Pacific will have to resubmit a development application for the golf course once funding has been secured. In the past, Alderman Carley's attitude towards the resort has ranged from opposition to scepticism, but the Mayor is now voicing confidence in the project.
After meeting with Noel this morning, that he convinced me that he will be able to acquire the necessary finance to continue at least this part of the project.
He knew what was happening, and so what can I tell you? He's a hero.
It was supposed to be a one-sided romp for Melbourne, Croatia, cocky with their lofted position in the National Soccer League and up against the minnows of the round ball code. But someone forgot to tell the fledglings that they weren't supposed to play like champions, and they turned on a spectacular display of ball control, fierce tackling, and most importantly, taking their chances and succeeding on 4 occasions. Why wouldn't the boss have a smile on his face?
Well, I really have, Mike. It was a super win, one that I've really gone over a few times this weekend and really found that the lads really did deliver. We've said they would all season. If we could put 1 or 2 goals away, then it would make all the difference, and we did that on Friday night.
While the attack was in great touch, the defence deserved much of the credit for shutting down the potent Croatian scoring potential. With only 1 home game left against Sydney Olympic, the Breakers can really do some damage to aspiring NSL finalists.
If the scenario works out, Sydney Olympic could actually be playing us, fighting for the top of the table, or might even be top of the table by the time to come. I'm looking forward to that because we somewhat robbed, I think, of a point down at Sydney Olympic, and I believe we can beat Sydney Olympic, particularly if we play like this. So hopefully a good crowd and a good result to round off the season.
Meanwhile, over at Broadmeadow in the Falcons camp, they must feel the odd ones out after going down to the Illawarra Hawks in a trial match in Wollongong 108-99. But talk to the Falcons and it was anything but a disappointing performance. They started off well, but the wheels fell off just before half-time and they trailed the Hawks by 20 points. What coach Tom Wiesman said at half-time must have worked, as the Falcons were brilliant and led by 2 at the last change. But the Hawks steadied, the Falcons fell into a couple of errors and the locals scraped home by 9 points.
Dairy farmer Owen Nicholson isn't taking any chances with leptospirosis. He vaccinates all his cattle once a year after his entire herd was infected.
I had everything going along all right, and all of a sudden the herd took sick. The milk went slimy and yellow, and I knew something was amiss. I had the herd tested, blood tested, and lepto was what was diagnosed.
While Owen lost more than $1,400 worth of milk and 4 of his cows suffered abortions, he was lucky not to have caught the disease himself. Authorities warn that farmers are at risk, the bacteria transmitted through the cattle's urine splashing into open wounds or perhaps the eyes. Lepto hits like a heavy dose of the flu.
High fever, headaches, muscle pains, sweats, and just not want to do anything, get very tired very easily, and that can persist. If it's not treated, can persist for some weeks, and it can get relapses too.
The Department of Agriculture is encouraging farmers to vaccinate their cattle. While there is no threat to milk consumers, farmers do need to be careful.
I think over the last 2 years, probably maybe 50% of the cattle herds in this part of the world have been infected with lepto, and left uncontrolled, probably most cattle herds will sooner or later get infected.
The Armidale Art Museum is one of only a few regional galleries which don't receive financial support from the local council. To finance its operations and conserve the 1,000-piece Howard Hinton collection, 2 works will be auctioned. They are this piece by Dutch artist Esaias van der Veld, dated the early 1600s, and this piece called Moorish Garden in Granada by Lord Leighton.
The Esaias van der Veld is probably somewhere around $120,000. And the Lord Leighton, it seems to be creeping up month by month. It's now somewhere around $600,000 or $700,000.
The Hinton collection is made up of primarily Australian pieces, so the sale of these European works should not detract from the overall collection. But while the Art Museum has decided to sell the works, they do not have the final say.
We're hoping that the Equity Court will only take perhaps another month. We then have to approach the federal government because any painting leaving the country has to have permission from the federal government if it's valued over $50,000.
It's hoped the pieces will be sold by October for a total of $1 million. The interest of $70,000 a year will then be used by the gallery for conserving the rest of the collection.
Bill Brooks is responsible for inspecting pest control operators and the correct use of pesticides.
In the last 12 months, I've inspected over 40 pest control operators, and I found that only 1 in 5 are correctly applying chemicals to pre-slab sites.
Mr. Brooks believes the recession has had an influence.
They're all vying for the same dollar, so they have to undercut to get the dollar so they can survive. Unfortunately, it means that they're probably diluting the chemical to make that dollar.
Whatever the motive, those in the industry agree the shortcuts are occurring.
When the chemical cost is around $1 per square metre to actually use the chemical, and if you're getting it cheaper than that, you've got to question whether there's been a big mistake made by the pest controller or he's just not getting the job done right.
It's the homeowner who suffers.
Well, the worst scenario is that the house is completely inundated with termites and you're literally eaten out of house and home.
Pest operators are monitored by inspectors taking samples from the controller's gun immediately after spraying is completed. The New South Wales Agricultural Department is in the final stages of developing a new technique allowing them to actually test the soil of a site that has been sprayed up until a pre-slab is to be laid. But while the department is becoming more stringent in its testing methods, it's also appealing to the public to become more aware.
Make sure that the guys are licensed, that they seem conscientious, they seem competent in what they're doing, they know the chemicals, and that they'll answer questions.
Further random inspections are planned for new housing developments in the Port Stephens, Central Coast and Hunter areas. For incorrect spraying procedures, a company can be fined up to $40,000, an individual operator $20,000.
The new workshop will mean the closure of some maintenance facilities at Cardiff, but some jobs will be created at Port Waratah.
The construction company will have jobs here in the construction phase, and then we will, by consolidating the facilities, establish more positions here to undertake all maintenance right here in Port Waratah.
Part of the official launch saw the Minister tackle Freight Rail's new fuelling system. Manufactured by Caves beach firm Banlaw, it's a quicker, cleaner refuelling method that will end the spillage of 700,000 litres of fuel each year. These new projects are just the beginning.
We'll be spending over $300 million, firstly, with this wagon maintenance facility. We'll be purchasing 350 new coal wagons, 85 new locomotives, and we'll be building new locomotive maintenance facilities at Kooragang.
Following in the footsteps of Liberal leader John Hewson, New South Wales Senator Bronwyn Bishop hit Newcastle shops to promote the Coalition's Fight Back package.
Well, it attacks the long-term problem of Australia's economy, not the short-term. The One Nation package at best is a band-aid.
Senator Bishop says for too long Australians have been subject to hidden consumption taxes through wholesale sales, fuel excise and payroll taxes. Fight Back, she says, is a tax reform package offering the consumer greater choice.
We're lowering the marginal tax rate so people have more money in their pocket each week. And then when they come to the supermarket, they'll make a decision on how they spend that.
How can you convince someone that's going to be paying 15% extra on basic items that they're going to be better off?
When you get this package at the end of the day, the price I pay for it now, with all the wholesale sales tax component, the fuel excise component, the payroll tax component, that will all come down.
The package stirs mixed reactions from locals.
So I think the poor man would come off a lot worse than what he is.
You end up paying less income tax, so you've got more money to spend, and then it just depends if you actually spend more, then you're the ones that are paying the tax.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Late this afternoon, several hundred people gathered outside the Hastings District Hospital in Port Macquarie. The state government plans to demolish the building and sell the site. A new hospital will be built in a different location. It'll be run by Mayne Nicholas, part of the Healthcare Australia group, which already operates the existing private hospital in town. Today, Bob Carr declared his opposition to the privatisation of hospitals.
The hospitals in this region are not the personal property of Mr. Greiner. They're owned by the people because there's been a massive public investment in them.
Bob Carr says the opposition will work with the independents in Parliament to block plans for the privatisation of Port Macquarie Health Services.
And National Party MPs are sitting idly by while the Greiner government experiments with privatisation of that great public asset, the public health system of New South Wales. And that will be the issue on which we campaign in this region.
Geographically, much of Gosford is a large sink, attracting stormwater runoff from 17 catchment areas. Last month's floods cost the city $10 million in closed businesses and swamped homes. The population of the area has doubled in the past 10 years. Creeks and waterways have silted up and thousands of homes are now listed as flood-prone.
The state government has encouraged us over the last 15 years to develop very, very fast. It is therefore put us in a position where we haven't been able to cope with the necessary infrastructure to make sure that that development doesn't contribute to extra flooding in the area.
After compiling a floodplain study, the council asked state and federal governments to join it in injecting $3.5 million each year for the next 5 years to overcome the problem.
We have received 2 days ago $600,000 from the state, but that represents a cup of money when we need a bucket.
Gosford's ratepayers already pay a flood levy. The council is using that money for mitigation work and to buy back homes in flood-prone areas. The land will be cleared for parks, which will double for holding ponds in flood times. Without government funding, an overall flood management plan will take 15 years to implement. Further north, the Wyong Shire Council is about to start work on an early flood warning system. The project may also include dredging of the entrance channel and the construction of a second opening to the sea to help flush the Tuggerah lakes in flood times.
The Tamworth squad of 13 has had 2 practice sessions to refine batting and fielding skills. Organised by the Department of Sport and Recreation, the match has attracted a great deal of interest. The inter-town match will take place at Tamworth's No. 1 Oval on Monday as part of the celebrations organised for Senior Citizens Week. The 30-over-a-side game will start at 10 a.m, but the sides will arrive at 9 for a photo call to mark the memorable occasion. Rules for traditional limited overs games will apply except for 2 variations. No one can be out for a duck, and if the openers are still batting after 15 overs, they'll retire to give the other team members a go.
When Senior met Junior at the Maryland Primary School today, the contrast proved fruitful.
Well, we've been talking about what it was like when they went to school and how they got to school and what was their bags like and what their school was like.
And has it been really different to you now?
Yeah, because they used to have their chairs join onto their tables and we don't.
The exercise enabled the students to show off their 6-week-old school, guided tours affording the chance to share learning experiences and witness the creative works on display. For 81-year-old Phyllis Probert, the sharing with great-grandson Mitchell was priceless but also hectic.
I'm just about exhausted. He's nearly walked my legs off, nearly.
So time for some sustenance and a valuable exercise in learning how to entertain a guest. The socialisation continued, this time the topic bridging all age barriers. The tunes, it seems, haven't changed, but the schooling certainly has.
We had no calculators in our day, all computers. Everything was done, freehand.
As a flow-on from today, the school hopes some senior citizens will return on a regular basis to share their wealth of wisdom with a new generation. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The future for Australia's farmers is looking considerably brighter. Wool prices are slowly climbing from its all-time lows last season. Rain has fallen across much of the state, easing the drought, and grain prices have stabilised.
Probably the best thing is that there's a real cost pressure going on. In other words, our costs are not rising as dramatically as they did in the 80s.
The Farmers' Boss is on a tour of the Northwest addressing meetings of the New South Wales Farmers Association. And a Tamworth businessman is willing to back up his claims. Pat McGarry is also confident the worst of the rural recession is over. His company, Cornish's Farm Machinery, was hard hit by the downturn in the rural economy. But Mr McGarry is now so confident of recovery, he's starting work on a new $500,000 headquarters for his business.
Since the break in the season before Christmas and the firming of grain prices, there's a strong return of confidence in the farming sector, and it's reflected in our sales figures through February, March. Looks real good.
For a while, it looked as if the 10 times national champion would miss out. Rush blew an engine in Adelaide on Friday night, but borrowed a car for Newcastle. No shortage of action during the 25 laps. Driver Brooke Tatnell involved in a spectacular rollover down the back straight.
First stop for the delegation was the Durangarling Hostel in Lambton, a 14-year-old complex which accommodates a dozen tertiary students in 1- and 2-bedroom units.
When we run exercises of public relations like we're doing today, it shows the general community that we are doing a good job and that there's no need to fear.
Cessnock City councillors declined to comment about this visit, but among themselves conducted comprehensive discussions concerning Durangarling and its similarities with the hostel proposed for a 10-hectare site some 20 kilometres south of Cessnock. The proposed hostel will house 16 teenage Aboriginal males with full-time house parents. Its purpose is educational, with youths gaining a variety of skills both on the site and in nearby technical colleges and high schools. The project would be funded by a private company called Aboriginal Hostels, together with the state and federal governments. The Awabakal Newcastle Aboriginal Cooperative would control its daily operations.
The Aboriginal children of the Hunter Valley will have an option and a choice to make themselves to further their education and to keep out of the court system.
Mr Archer doesn't believe recent publicity concerning Aborigines will largely damage their case.
It won't stop our path. I think the issues at hand that have happened in the last week or so may be a little bit of a barrier, but it's nothing that we can't overcome.
After Durangarling, the delegation moved to Kirinara Youth Hostel and then on to a site inspection at Cessnock. All exercises charged with creating greater awareness of the issue. The real test comes next week when Aboriginal hostels will hold a public meeting in Cessnock. Here they'll attempt to explain how they operate and allay any community concerns over the establishment of the new hostel. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.